Without much ado, I'm going to call on the first speaker for today. Our first speaker is a senior special advisor on industrialization to the president of the African Development Bank. In his role as the senior special advisor to the president of the African Development Bank, he coordinates the bank's industrial policy, the agro-industrial processing zones, and the pharmaceutical sector. He served in the UN being United Nations, system for over 20 years and is a member of the Advisory Council on Industrialization of the African Continental Free Trade Area. He is also a winner of the National Productivity Order of Merit and has authored over 20 books on industrialization and economic diversification. I think we can salute that. Thank you. He's a global thought leader whose extensive contributions to the field of development, economics, and industrial policy are recognized worldwide. Please join me in welcoming to the podium Professor Oyebanji Oyelaran-Oyeyinka as he speaks to us this morning on the paradox of a rich country and its poor people. You're welcome, sir. You're welcome, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Iroko, as I call him. He laid the foundation for today. Let me stand on all the existing protocols that have been made so that we don't waste too much time. But I want to just congratulate my friend, Boyega Fatimileyin. Building an institution is not easy. Building people is the most difficult. Someone used the word reliable, humble, and I know that describes him. We were together in Ife in those days. We were not like paddies, close friends, but there are people you know in Ife that you know that these are quality people, and 99% of them are quality people. Like Iroko, for example. When he got the award when I was at the United Nations, it was a well-deserved award. And he wouldn't know what he did to my own career at that point for my principal stand on an issue. And I came to him and I asked him for something, for me to do something for the state. Someone whispered to me and said, Iroko, no, he would never do it. I went to him and he did it. And he did it so well. I remember him so fondly for that. But today is for Boyega Fatimileyin. And I want to thank you for inviting me to deliver the keynote speech. I want to thank all those who have made today possible. A lot of the themes, a lot of the subjects that you're going to find in my speech today have been mentioned coincidentally. In 2014, when I launched a book, Rich Country, Poor People, Iroko was there. I was really shocked when I saw his name. I said, because I was thinking of the same issue today. I have a whole range of issues I was thinking about. And then the commissioner came and said, speaking of inclusive development, I said, did they spy on my keynote address or what? So it just shows that the spirit is one. The spirit of the times that we are in now is one. The context for my speech is a Nigeria where we face challenges, both general and specific to our country. They include escalated malnutrition, like he said, due in large measure to rural-urban insecurity. The challenges we face collectively as Nigerians have long and deep roots in history. It's an outcome of several factors, including long-term neglect of agriculture, the lack of structural transformation, unfavorable negative terms of trade, for example, that we now face now, and all of the shocks that we faced over the last couple of years, including oil shocks, COVID, and all of this. All of these have impacted on all our lives, particularly the human capital sector, health, and education. Those are the bedrocks of human agency. a healthy and educated person is able to take hold of their own lives and make the best of it. Figures from United Nations have been, shown today. High maternity, high maternal mortality, for example, 576 per 100,000 live births. We account for 20% of global maternal deaths in Nigeria. What is actually should worry us and propel us to action is that when you look globally, the balance of world power has actually rapidly shifted to countries that we used to describe as third world. Yet, much of sub-Saharan Africa, particularly Nigeria, which should be the champion of sub-Saharan Africa, we remain in poverty, enormous poverty, widening inequalities. Yet everyone agrees that Africa is the future. Africa with a huge population, vast arable land. 65% of all uncultivated arable land is now in Africa. 65%. Yet, a country like the Netherlands, we have 22 times the land of Netherlands. Last year, they exported 130 billion euros of food products. 130 billion euros. Almost 4 times all the crude oil export of Nigeria. The world's future lies in Africa when you look at the population. But you have to do something deliberate to ensure that Nigeria plays its destined role. So this speech, I want to provoke 2 or 3 questions. In our reimagining of a prosperous Nigeria, is there a better economic structure and more viable pathways to growth and development? And emphasis are being not just on growth, but on development. Is there a way to reinvent, to rebuild, to reimagine a Nigerian economy and its communities, considering the distinct levels of dissatisfaction that we all now experience? Is there a way to build institutions? A one man and his friends have built a great institution in Fatimile, India, and Fatimile. So what nature of institutions will drive growth and development forward? And most importantly, what should be the agreed mechanisms for achieving the goals of development? So let me start with the basic conditions in respect of where we are now. Due in part to the political and economic choices that were made over the last 6 decades, Nigeria has developed a systemic structure of inequality driven by inequity in policies, where 20% now own almost 70% of the wealth of the nation, and 70% of the population are still mired in low productivity, low skill, rural labor. This vast and persistent inequality has locked a vast majority out of the quality of life that is necessary for an individual to fulfill their potential. Nigeria's non-inclusive growth has proceeded during impressive economic, albeit episodic growth. In the 2000s, we were growing actually at about 6%. From the middle part of that to almost the end. But yes, as was mentioned, much of this growth was happening with, it was a jobless growth. So we have a poverty situation that is driven by a non-inclusivity of the nature of the growth that we have. Even now, the microeconomics shows us the weak fundamentals that is showing up in the way we see it. You go to our countryside, for example, you just see all kinds of young people just milling around. It breaks your heart when you drive and you see they're just milling around doing nothing. Unemployment rate is high. We should do something. Low consumer spending. This is why we don't have demand. Absence of commensurate minimum wage to mitigate inflationary growth. For these reasons, I want to submit that we pay very close attention to the causes, the consequences, and the way out of poverty. The poverty challenge, we must face it. The most fundamental reason why poverty matters is that it circumscribes the capacity of a nation's most important asset, the individual citizen. it degrades your existential capability. When you are poor, you have no voice. When you are poor, you have no freedom to speak. You take anything that anyone throws at you. It arises in large part also out of inequality of opportunity. The foundation upon which people's life depends is their ability to have an agency to power their own lives. If we don't give opportunity to people, talent is abundant, but opportunity is rare. Let me elaborate 4 points why we must build an inclusive society by reducing widespread poverty and inequality. First, we take equity very serious. That is leveling the playing field for everyone, irrespective of gender, nationality, race, to build inclusive development. Poverty and inequality is costly to economies and society. And there have been studies that we have had. I've been involved in many of them. When you have a large part of your economy in that low-level income equilibrium, it drags down the economy. In other words, when you have too many people doing nothing, it drags down growth, and of course, it affects the economy. Studies have shown it. Strangely, one of them was an IMF study that actually shows that the more inequality you have and the more people in that condition, the lower your economic growth. It throws the economy in an inefficient cycle because these people have no skill. They depend on others. Yoruba will say, you become, when you're a rich man and 10 of your neighbors are also poor, you are dragged down. All kinds of studies have shown a strong association between lower levels of inequality in developing countries and sustained periods of growth and development. In other words, the more you reduce inequality, the difference between living standards of people, the faster will be the growth of your economy. So poverty is a very dangerous thing. Poverty is a cancer. It's a curse. For me, poverty and corruption are the big cancers of our society. Because these people who are poor, they drag down growth of the economy. Because we have failed to take action to educate everybody. So in other words, long-run sustainability of our economy is closely connected to sustain equality. I had all kinds of numbers, but I think it doesn't belong to this place. Let me just go ahead. Number 2, societies with high levels of poverty tend to have high opportunity inequality, which in the long run manifests in poor employment opportunities for a vast section of society. Because as we know, the most important channel for redistributive growth and justice is employment. And the large population of our young people have been shortchanged in the employment market. This pattern of growth without equity should be at the heart of human development for our country. Inequality, of course, is also equally tied to poor human capital formation. Education, experience, learning, apprenticeship, while lower levels of human is also a slower economic growth. The third is that inequality and poverty are the main sources of social tension. They say a hungry man is an angry man. Nobody believes in, and this is where we have a lot of trust deficit. When any government official speaks, you just shrug and say, oh, okay. And that's what Iroko was referring to. I call Governor Iroko. That's our nickname for him. You know, when any government official, okay. And of course, some of them have proved it to be true. Anyway, they are not reliable people. They say something, they do something else. So it has been a powerful channel of social conflict, and we need to deal with it. Food price now, food price inflation is now 40%. In other words, the major inflation that we have is actually induced by shortage of food. And I have been involved with a lot of discussions with government and all of that. The president declared a food security emergency. But you want to see commensurate action along those lines. Poverty rate now is estimated to be 39% in 2023. 87 million Nigerians living below poverty line, that was 2023. 63% multidimensionally poor. These are figures that we all brandy around, but these are real people. There was a video that I wanted to show, I just couldn't show it. I looked at it 2 or 3 times, it breaks my heart, and I know it's going to foul the mood in this place. So I said, my wife was still texting me and said, "You want to show this video?" I said, "No, I'm not going to show it. We are celebrating a great man. Don't let it. It is so degrading, inhuman, where people live. I just didn't have the heart to show it. So it is not of little consequence that the incidence of poverty actually was more manifest during the decades of large prosperity for Nigeria. This is the paradox that I refer to. The paradox highlights how endemic corruption vitiates a country's energy when nothing is reinvested but simply siphoned off as rent by political elite. And the final point about the source of poverty is that they are part-dependent conditions. If your father is poor, your grandfather is poor, you are likely to be poor. And we have shown it in studies. We have shown it. And they are related to this asymmetric power distribution and wealth imbalances in our society. All these feed different forms of inequalities. If you are born poor, you'll be discriminated against in schooling, in everything. Unless there is an intervention by government, by, someone. It drags people's progress. It is a drag on your progress. It reduces your chances in life. And this is why we have to deal with. This is why a lot of people are so angry, even though they may not even understand the sources of the issues. You see people now talking to this government and say they don't know where these things are coming from. It's an accumulation of 60 years. People got up and, but they are not educated to understand it. And this is why the elite must take responsibility. Poverty degrades human capabilities and well-being. It diminishes a person's capacity. An old person, an ill person, a poor person, the location where you were born, they all determine how your life will play out unless something intervenes. This is why interventions are very important. And this is why it is for the whole society. If we don't deal with it, one day somebody will wake up and your house will not be your house anymore. So we must provide people with a level playing field. Poverty and inequality also translate to unhealthy wealth concentration. You see people and you're wondering, what do you want to do with all this now? It's a disease of black people. And Iroko was talking about these things. Wealth concentration is a big area of study in sociology. Under certain conditions, created wealth concentrates in possession and already wealthy individuals or entities who are not actually investing it profitably. Those who already hold wealth have that ability to invest. If they do it well, it leads to a productive society. But what we find is that many of them don't do it in a way that is contributing much to society. We are celebrating Fatimile today because he has created an institution that has employed several people spread all over the world. When he sent me, I didn't even hesitate. I didn't even look at my calendar. I just accepted it because I know who he is. So negative wealth concentration can lead to persistence of inequality and poverty if we don't invest them properly. So how do we reimagine and rebuild Nigeria? The thing that we need to get rid of, number one, rent seeking. The one important concept to understand the tangled web of oil, the oil economy, which is what we are built, is to deal with rent seeking. And the simple definition is as follows. It means to expend resources to gain wealth by increasing one's share of current wealth, not creating new wealth. This is where rent seeking is very dangerous. This is why they said you bake the cake, right? The cake is diminishing. We are not building a bigger cake, and we are all getting poorer. Since resources are expended, but no new wealth is created, the net effect of rent seeking is to reduce total social wealth. That's why we are not investing in education, in health. Look at our schools. Look at our universities. We went to a place where we are so proud of. You go there now, students are sleeping, 20 people in one small space. Why? Because we are not investing resources. And some people who don't need the wealth, they have 20 houses. You hear some people, you sit there and you have headache. Maybe because people like us are not rich, we don't understand what it means. So you just have a headache. Say, what the hell is he doing with this? So rent seeking is different from profit seeking. Profit seeking is the creation of wealth, which is what Fatimilenya has done. Build a great institution, drive progress, build homes, build people. While rent seeking is the use of social institutions such as power, for example, to redistribute wealth, among different groups without creating new wealth. So it's for your family, cronyism, your friend, everybody, but nobody else. Your dog. So that's what rent seeking does. Cronyism. The second one that we need to get rid of is the Dutch disease mentality. The Dutch disease explains how resource abundance that generates large quantities of foreign exchange can distort exchange rates and domestic wages, thereby damaging the growth of other sectors of the economy. Remember Udoji Award? It was actually a different thing that was recommended, but the only thing the military people did was just to raise wages. Same happened with Dr. Phillips. I was working with him at NISA then. They recommended something, but populism, they just raise wages. When people cry about raise wages, the market woman will just raise the price of their goods also, and we are back to square one. For me, it's not about raising wages. I agree that wages must go up, but it's about providing service for the people at affordable costs. Let health care be there. Let food be in abundance, and we have the capacity to do it. So the definition of the Dutch disease is that it is an economic phenomenon by which revenues from natural resources and the exports of that, which we have specialized in over the last, God knows, 50 years, it raises artificially your exchange rate, the value of it. But it's artificial. This is why the central bank also has to be fighting the dollar. We have a former minister of finance here. You have to use that money to always be defending the dollar. But suppose that thing disappears, then we are back to square one. So, but the most damaging part of it is that it takes your eyes off the tradable sectors, as we call them, agriculture and industry. So we totally neglected those sectors that made wealth for countries for 300 years, right from the British Industrial Revolution in 1740. Manufacturing is at the heart of wealth creation. Any country that degrades its manufacturing industry will degrade their living standard. Gone are the days where we had Michelin, where we had everything all over the place, everywhere. If we had continued on that trajectory, as Iroko said, We listened to the structural adjustment people, destroyed our industry. People say, oh, degrade your exchange rate and then you can export. What are we exporting? We are not exporting anything. The oil was determined internationally, the price of oil. So, and the higher spending that you find from government is on useless things. I'm sorry to use that word. Projects that are never completed. All kinds of things. So you build a capital stock that is not working for you. You can name so many of them. Ajakuta, Delta Steel, the aluminum plant, fertilizer, all of them built but never worked for the nation because they won't allow them to be completed. So in your books, the capital stock is showing up that you have invested 20 billion, but it's getting you nothing. This is the source of our problem. And then you are paying back the debt that you took. By the way, in the 70s, we actually were earning more money than we were importing. So it was good. So we were able to camouflage that we were rich. So we get more from. But then, when volatility and all of those struck the oil market, we found out that we're dancing naked in the market. So, rent seeking, we have to get rid of. Dutch disease, we have to understand. It's part of the mindset of today that people still believe Nigeria is rich. If you go to Nairobi, 1 liter of fuel is almost $2. Oil dependence, number 3, also destroys productivity growth. Productivity is at the heart of everything. The reason why we are very much behind the industrialized countries is exactly this. When you rely too much on oil, look at this. You see social spending, all of the oil rent, you depend on rent from oil, you always see yourself down that lower right corridor. And more importantly also, it weakens state capacity. When you depend too much on this thing, we don't have a good tax structure, as we are now only seeing 2023 now having committee on tax and so forth. A country like this, with all the brains. The other day I saw somebody announcing we are now a policy on food certification. I said, a country like this? So if you rely too much on oil, you give your brain holiday, basically. Free money. It's like a omonile type of mentality. Free money, just take it, sell it, take it, sell it. But others are producing. Others are producing. They are learning over 300 years. People, oh, you can leapfrog development. You cannot leapfrog development. When COVID came, why didn't we leapfrog development? We're begging for vaccines all over the world. Because those fellows, Moderna, Pfizer, all of them, they built up their industrial capacity, science and technology over 200 years. So when COVID came, all they did was to go and take out those things. So Nigeria needs to invest in sustained human capital, sustained skills. We've crippled our fiscal capacity over time because we depend too much on oil. We've crippled our bureaucratic capacity because too much, and the bureaucratic capacity also has become so corrupt. Everybody's saying the money is free. If you don't work for something, you don't value it. So we have to transform our economy. Let me give you a figure. I want to end now. We are food insecure. We should not be food insecure. For example, 66 million people in Q1 of 2023 were food insecure. You know what is it this year? 100 million. This is according to the World Food Program, because they collect all this data all the time. 19 million are facing acute hunger. 44 million Nigerians are in crisis, what we call crisis level. We have, in the UN, we measure them about 5 levels as at March 2024. And, people are going around, the elite and they are as if nothing is happening. As if there's nothing, it's a crisis. And these Nigerians are spending about 50-60% of their income on food. 50%. Let me give you a comparative figure. In the US, people spend only 6% on food. We spend 60%. In the US, they say 6%. It's called the Engels law. You know, the richer a country or society is, the less you spend on food, for example, because it's in abundance. This is the secret of Asia. They made food so abundant. And we have 65% of uncultivable, arable land. And we are crying about hunger. I don't understand it. Dear colleagues, this is why the AFDB, African Development Bank, where I work now, have been focusing a lot on agribusiness and the special agricultural economic zone that I've been championing. According to the World Economic Forum, food systems represent over $10 trillion. $10 trillion, or 12% of global GDP today. 40% of the jobs are from there. I was telling you the Netherlands export $130 billion. 17 million people, that country, small country, $130 billion export of food and food. Last year, you can Google it. But what's our problem? Productivity. Our yield is very low. Where others will get maybe 12 tons per hectare, we get 1. Yeah, because we are not mechanizing, we are not using all the inputs that we should use. And you just ask yourself, why? Everyone knows the secret, but why is it not happening? So it's not about going to the public and making policy. That's why people don't believe government people. They don't believe anything. You just say it and then you go to bed. Someone has to do it. So we are not mechanized, we don't use tractors, we don't use all of those things that come from industry. And this is where I tie the two together. A country will remain poor when it remains agrarian, using hoe and cutlass. You have to adopt modern methods, move from that traditional agrarian sector to what we call agribusiness. We have to tie to get the two together. So that's the first one. Number 2 is that we have to rebuild our industrial system. As I said earlier, everything got destroyed, from the mid-80s especially. We have to rebuild them. Number 3, we have to diversify the economy. You know, we have said this so many times. I wrote a book 2 years ago on it. We have to do it in practice. We have to prioritize it. And number 4, we have to prioritize security and basic services. Nigeria is ranked very high in the index of state fragility because of our over-dependence on this mineral economy. Fragility, of course, is associated with the combination of systemic dysfunctions, inefficiency or failure in governance. One of the big issues, actually, is not just about countries facing armed conflict alone, which we are facing in some parts. Thank God it's reducing now, we hear. But Nigeria ranks very low, very high on fragile state measures because it fails to deliver the most basic services both to the poor and to the rich. So those are areas we need to focus. How do we channel our resources to do? As I close, my dear friends and our celebrant, the choices and actions taken by those in political positions, leaders, elites, they tend to overshadow almost everything. Their choices, their interests, their predilections have pushed this nation into a current trajectory of a negative economic growth pathway. But we must play our part. And I end with a joke. Again, I go back to Iroko. When I was working with him on the urban thing, he did fantastic job he did. I went to see him one day because we had raised money to do what we call urban observatory in Ondo State. You know, he was so excited. And he told me, Banji, I want health first. You know, it's a UN thing where you can, a governor can sit in his office and you know everything going on in all the local governments. Just put in the data. We went to him, to Kogi, to about 2 other states. By the way, the one for one of those, let me mention, I went there 2 years after. They didn't even open the carton. So in his own case, he was championing everything. But he had one commissioner who refused to sign just a land. I got money from Sweden to do something for some young people where you have free internet, free. So one day he was having a function, I went with him. So I sat with him. I said, Iroko, talk to this your commissioner. We even took him to Colombia for World Urban Forum. I said, we can't bribe you, but just to incentivize him, we took him there. Am I going to use UN money to bribe you? Or AFD? We can't bribe you, but just to let him see what others are doing. Oh, he was so excited. He got, don't worry, Prof, when I get back, I'll sign it. When we go back, the demon got back into his head. He didn't sign. So we're sitting with Iroko. I said, please talk to this, your commissioner. Iroko was just looking, so he said, I don't have a commissioner. The guy was sitting there. I said, no, this man. He said, no, Banji. I said, I don't have a commissioner. He's here. And the guy was just smiling sheepishly. We must do our part. You can't blame Tinubu alone or somebody alone. We all must do our part. We must not imagine that all we wish for Nigeria will materialize in our lifetime. This reimagining is about a greater Nigeria for our children and their future offsprings. I want to thank you very much. I wish you long life, very healthy life, and I wish Nigeria very well. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We can do better than that. That was wonderful. Thank you very much, Professor. Thank you very much. You know, like we said at the beginning of the program, we have the team of speakers. We couldn't have put together a better faculty, let me say, or a better team. I'm sure you agree with me that Professor Oyebanji Oyelaran has done justice to that topic. If we have questions, please put down your questions. Maybe, sir, we'll take maybe one or two questions. Do we have any questions in the house? If you have a question, you can pen it down, or if you want us to pass the microphone. And for the other speakers as well, as they give as they deliver their speech, their papers, if you have any question, please note it down. You know, the former governor,